You are listening to 97.5 The Fanatic right now, and joining us on the Comcast Business Hotline Beyond Fast from ESPN, the great Buster Olney. Buster, what's happening, man?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing fantastic. Great. Loved the broadcast the other night. You guys did a great job. We just had you here in Philadelphia. You really had the spoils. I mean, not only did you get to enjoy Citizens Bank Park, but the Fandemic crew out there behind you as well.
Yeah, it was fun. You know, those guys were starting to form about 2.5 hours before the broadcast. And, you know, so you have some downtime, and I went back and talked to them. And I was really sort of curious because obviously they've gotten a lot of attention, especially after that the Yankee game when Aaron Boone complained about them. And it was neat, you know, being out there and sort of feeling the hierarchy, right?
Sure.
You know, where, you know, certain people are in certain spots. And at one point, one of them blew an air horn and was like, guys, they tell us they want us to park over there. So can you please move your car over there? And then during one of my conversations, somebody pulled up in a car and had music blasting, and they were like honking at me, stop, we're trying to talk. Keep the music down. And I was, you know, when it was 10-0 in the second inning, you kind of turn around and figure, well, eventually they're going to drift away. And no, you know, they stayed, which was really cool. And, I mean, I think the one thing that really has jumped out at me this year that I learned about baseball that I didn't know before, you know, we know that the fans miss the players during the shutdown. They miss the game. I don't think we ever had a true sense before this year of how much the players need the fans in the ballpark.
Wow.
Because, you know, the product on the field, I've been to 4 games now in person. The product on the field is not close, and I hear that all the time from managers and general managers and players about how much they miss the borrowed energy that they get from the fans.
Well, how about this? Looking at the stadium now, when it comes to the cardboard cutouts at Citizens Bank Park, look, you've been around, you said 4 games you've been to, and looking around the rest of baseball, maybe I'm biased, but it seems like the Phillies lead the league in cardboard cutout fans.
Oh, that's exactly right. A friend was making that point to me the other day about how it seemed like that they were ahead. And look, I've heard, and you know, every organization makes its own decision. I've heard of other organizations who kind of view the cutouts as being, you know, cheesy, you know, something they don't want to do. I love it. Like, you love the system where they have, where if somebody hits a home run and, you know, hits a fan and then they replace it with a player. It's awesome. And it's a way to, you know, connect the franchise with the fans, the games with the fans at a time when they can't come to the park, which is, you know, one of the times in the middle of the game, because it was a long game and we had time, but during a half inning to walk back out there and then turn around and there's John Middleton, you know, walking over to say hi. That's really cool because their connections obviously can't be as close this year. And to see John Middleton, to see the Phillies foster that was excellent.
Mm. Now, you guys do something different this year for the broadcast. I know it started, I think, during the All-Star game a year or two ago, but you guys are actually talking to players now in-game. That's got to be a wild experience. How's all that come together?
Well, and this was what we had on Sunday night. I think it was only the second time in Major League Baseball history that you had a player talking back to the booth during the course of a regular season game. It happened with Rhys Hoskins on Saturday, and then we had, you know, going into the game, we didn't know this until about 5 hours before the game. We got word that Ronald Acuna Jr., the Braves, had agreed to talk to us during the second inning in Spanish, and Alex Rodriguez was going to translate, and Bryce agreed. We were told to wear that earpiece and talk back to the booth, you know, in innings 1 through 5. Well, I can tell you from behind the scenes, it was a total disaster with technology early. You know, Bryce wasn't given the earpiece right away, so he couldn't hear, which is why you guys saw a couple instances where they were trying to talk to the players and the players couldn't hear them. And when the score got to be 10-0, our producer says in her ear, well, you know, Bryce is probably not going to want to participate, one-sided game. And Bryce heard this and was like, no, I'm good. You know, we can talk.
Really?
Guys, in a 4-hour and 15-minute game with over 400 pitches, Bryce saved that broadcast because we had so much dead time. And I'm telling you, I mean, you guys, you know, he loses the earpiece banging into the wall. I think it was in the third inning. And you figure, okay, well, that's it. And Bryce finds the earbud And he puts it back in, and he's telling our guys in the truck, "Hey, I found the earpiece, guys. I'm good to go." And Matt Viscurge and Alex Rodriguez are giving him opportunities off air in between innings. Hey, Bryce, you've been so generous. We get to innings 3, 4, 5. Been so generous. It's okay. We'll wrap. No, I'm good. We're ready to go. And he wore it through the 8th inning.
Wow.
And it was an absolute technology disaster. I could not hear Bryce in my spot what he was saying back to the booth. But I, was texting with a friend during the course of the game, and he was like, "Boy, I've learned so much. I got so much insight into what was going on the field, from Bryce." And I mean, he was extraordinary. We hear all the time people complain baseball is not accessible in the way the other sports are. Bryce bent over backwards. Let me promise you, based on all the technology problems we were having during the course of the game.
That's awesome, man. Speaking with Buster Olney, ESPN, of course. Now, as far as the X's and O's goes with the Phillies here and some of the acquisitions they've made, it seems like a complete overhaul. Worst bullpen in baseball. We know the numbers there. But they had David Phelps yesterday from the Brewers, and it's the 4th reliever the Phillies have actually added in the last 10. Have you ever seen an overhaul this quickly for a bullpen?
Last year with the Nationals.
Okay.
Which is why, the Nationals bullpen was in the same place the Phillies bullpen was this season. 2 months into the season, it was the worst bullpen in baseball. And Mike Rizzo, their general manager, made a bunch of changes. And the one thing, when you talk to front offices, they'll tell you, that the one area of a team that you can really turn around is a bullpen, because the performances are so volatile, and the relievers can find a fix and suddenly get hot. Daniel Hudson was released in spring training last year, and he threw the last pitch of the World Series as a dominant closer. And so just in talking with Joe Girardi the other day, he really feels like that with more experience coming to the bullpen, all of a sudden different guys can be slotted in places that are probably best for them, and they're getting David Phelps at exactly the right time. Mike Petriello, who works for MLB.com, did our trade deadline show with us yesterday, and he spoke about the metrics and how good they are right now for David Phelps, who the Phillies are getting when he's hot, and he's someone who'll take the ball every day, and he's throwing well, and just one more experienced guy out there. I do feel like that, any team that has a terrible bullpen should always remember what happened with the Nationals, where they went from being awful to doing the dog pile at the end of the World Series last year with a completely revamped bullpen.
Buster, if you're looking at this Phillies team and you're telling a Phillies fan, look, there's reason to believe in this team because of what? What do you see as the biggest reason to believe in this team?
Well, first off, the nature of the postseason structure. If you get into the dance, you can do some damage. Like I think anybody with a brain would say, well, if the Phillies play the Dodgers, of course the Dodgers would be favorites. In a best-of-3 series? Are you kidding? Like, anything can happen. And the fact that the Phillies have such a strong and experienced lineup is going to play in the postseason. They have so many guys who are adept, and I think we saw that against Tommy Milone in our game the other night. This lefty who's going to be crafty, he's going to go low and away. So what does Andrew McCutchen do? What do the other guys do? They're looking to take the ball the other way. They're waiting for Tommy Milone to eventually have to relent and throw the ball in the strike zone, and they're hammering it. And that's going to be an advantage that they have all season. And you do, as time goes on, I felt like that Zach Eflin has pitched in some bad luck. He certainly has good stuff. Aaron Nola, you wonder if he's going to get on a run. So I think all those combination of things and the fact that it's an unusual playoff structure, I think gives a lot of teams, if they just get into it, they're going to have a puncher's chance.
Speaking with Buster Olney here, I know this is the $64,000 question when it comes to the Phillies and Matt Klentak and JT Realmuto. Do you see a long-term deal getting done here in Philadelphia, or do you think JT will at least go out there and test the market?
I think it's going to be hard because of what happened the other day with Steve Cohen taking the lead in the purchase of the Mets. Because, in the time I've covered baseball, every new owner comes in and wants to make a statement, and that's not going to be any more true than with the Mets, who have always been this big market team that spent $50 million, probably less than they should have. Well, Steve Cohen's going to come in. He's going to immediately be the richest owner in baseball, and he's going to want to make a statement, and they need a catcher. So if you're JT Realmuto, you're sitting there and you knew the Phillies had interest, it's going to be a bidding war. And I think he's going to wind up going to the team, especially because of all the, what's going to be a disastrous free agent period for players this winter, because there's just going to be so many free agents. The financial landscape's going to change. I think JT is going to be a player who might feel the responsibility of, you know what, I need to take the highest offer. And I got to tell you, just given the history, I would not be surprised if the word from the Mets is, okay, we're going to bid X number of dollars more, whatever the Phillies put on the table.
That is remarkably depressing. No, no, Buster.
I apologize.
No. You're a straight shooter, Buster Olney. You're a straight shooter. I appreciate that. Could the Phillies have done anything to offset this, or is this just a matter of, hey, JT Realmuto's a hell of a player. He wants the opportunity to test the market. This was going to happen regardless of anything with arbitration or anything like that?
I think it's going to really what it comes down to is I think the Phillies got unlucky with the timing of the pandemic, which sounds really trite, but
No, I understand.
But the fact is that they were down the track. They were beginning the road down a road in which I think they would have reached an agreement in the spring. But the shutdown happens, the whole thing is thrown up in the air, and then as this year has gone on and the Mets situation develops, if you're Jeff Barry, the agent for JT, you're going to look at that and say, you know what, I'm going to have a legitimate bidder, two big market teams going for the same guy, and I think he has a responsibility to play that out. And I don't blame the Phillies for not necessarily making a deal with JT in the spring, but it's going to be difficult. Now, the one X factor, and it's very possible we've seen players do this. JT might at some point go to Jeff and his agent and say, you know what, I want to stay in Philadelphia. Stoke the bidding war, get as much money as you can, but in the end, I want to wind up with Philadelphia. I don't know what JT's feelings are on that. I've seen other free agents do that. Mike Messina went into free agency years ago, and before it began, I said, hey, what's going to happen? He said, just always remember this. I'm going to sign with the Yankees. I'm going to be talking with the Mets. I'm going to be talking with other teams. But just know this, Buster. I'm going to sign with the Yankees.
Yeah.
And it's going to be for this range. And so we'll see if JT does something like that.
All right, well, we'll keep our fingers crossed for something like that. Hopefully he just wants to be here in Philly. We also saw that with Cliff Lee just a few years back now with the Phillies as well. Buster, a couple more for you. When teams around the league and the GMs around the league look at Matt Klentak, how is he known around the league?
I think he's respected. People like dealing with him. They talk about what a good person he is. They think he's prepared to do trades. I think that the one industry question that people have is that for the Phillies' 5 years of tanking, did they not get quite enough? In other words, did they not get the payoff? And we know this because the Astros were the team that popularized that. And, they got Alex Bregman and Carlos Correa, George Springer for those years where they were down. And I think that's one of the questions that people have about the time that the Phillies were restructuring and taking their payroll down and trying to build up through the draft. Did they get enough payoff? Mm-hmm.
And then I also want to ask you, what we usually hear in this city is that the ownership group does not want to go over the luxury tax. I assume that's the same thing you hear?
I have not specifically asked that about the Phillies.
Okay.
So I can't give you a good answer on that.
Okay. And then finally, looking at Rhys Hoskins, he's definitely been a streaky hitter throughout his career. It seems like he is in a good streak right now, similar to the way maybe on a national perspective people look at Matt Klentak. What do you think we have here in Rhys Hoskins?
I think someone who's always going to have good at-bats, who's always going to have high base percentage. He's going to draw a share walk. He's going to have some power. What I've wondered about with Rhys is he going to be one of the players who's going to be swept up in this absolutely enormous wave of free agents that we see this winter? And I'll tell you why. There's as teams deal with the shift in the financial landscape, and all these teams have lost a lot of money, you're obviously not going to be making changes with paying young players because you want to keep your cheapest guys. You can't do anything about guys with existing contracts like Bryce Harper. His contract is set in stone. there is an expectation among general managers that there are going to be a huge number of non-tenders this winter, where guys who have 4+ years of service time, 5+, eligible for arbitration, are going to be cut loose. And so there could be a pool of free agents in the end. It's something in the range of 350 players. And one of those positions that always sees a volume work, in sort of the context of supply and demand against the players is first base. Rhys is a popular player. He's obviously loved within the organization for the type of person that he is. I am going to be curious to see how the Phillies handle his situation, given where I think, some of the numbers are going to go with the first baseman in relation to salary.
Buster, I really appreciate you coming on with us, man, and giving us so much time, and I hope you enjoyed your time in Philadelphia while you guys were doing the game Sunday night.
Man, I had a great time. It was awesome. So much fun, and as I say, I cannot overstate how great Bryce Harper, how generous he was with us the other night.
That's really good to hear, man. Buster, thank you so much. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay, guys, thanks.
Appreciate
Thanks, Buster.
it. Buster Olney, ESPN, joining us there on the Comcast Business
Everything's
Hotline.
fine.
Yeah.
Mark Farzetta with Bob Cooney and Jamie Lynch. Mornings on 97.5 The Fanatic. Philadelphia.